Hey everyone, Internet PCS book reader here. Today I want to talk about My Friends by Hisham Matar. Since I just finished the Nobel Prize winning literature We Do Not Part by Han Kang, I thought I might as well read another award winning literature. This time is this one, the book that won the 2024 Orwell Prize for Political Fiction. I've never read Hisham Matar work before, but I do know that his debut work in The Country of Man won the Booker Prize Award in 2006, and then his biography work in 2016, The Return, won the Pulitzer Prize, so I'm looking forward to reading this book. The story starts in King Crossing where two friends, Khaled and Hossam, who have shared friendship for more than 2 decades, was about to part ways. Hossam has been away in Libya for 5 years and is now temporarily back in Paris, where he and Khaled first met before heading to America to spend the rest of his life there. Hossam was always the black sheep of his family, and when he returned to Libya, he was there to join the rebel force, fighting against the regime there. He eventually joined one of the most important fights that finally took out Muammar Gaddafi. He worked as Ministry of Justice for a while there, married his cousin Malak, and had a daughter there before the various forces in Libya started to turn their gun to each other, forcing him to return home to London. He didn't stay in London for long because he immediately took the opportunity of a house his father bought in California and decided to move there with his entire family. Besides Khaled and Hossam, there's a third person forming the trio of friendship named Mustafa. But Mustafa, who also went to Libya along with Hossam, did not and most likely will never return to London. And now all three friends are separated by continents, a distance that separates them through space and time. For Khaled and Mustafa, Hossam has always been an individual that affected their lives since before they even met. When Khaled was still living in Libya, he already knew Hossam from his short story that was once featured in a radio program that his family always listened to since it was hosted by Mohammed Mustafa Ramadan, the BBC host that came from Libya and is speaking against Gaddafi. He is secretly their pride and joy as Libyan. Their family was affected by this short story so much that Khaled's father decided to find out more about the author. He is Hossam Zoa, who came from the Zoa's family, an important family from Libya. Sidi Rajab Zoa used to work for King Idris before he was taken down by Gaddafi. Zoa is a politician who eventually sought the Libyan rebel leader Omar al-Mukhtar to Mussolini at one point in their life to gain richness in gold. They also then sold parts of Libya to British near the end of King Idris' rule. When Libya was taken by Gaddafi, the Zoas was taken out, but their son Hossam, like many of Arab exile, ran to London. The next few days, the news turned into the kidnapping, torture, and assassination of Syrian journalist Salim el-Dosi. He was missing for 10 days because he went to Syria to go to his mother's funeral despite his friend's warning, and when his body was finally found, he was beaten and bruised with his right hand, his right hand, broken in several places, amputated and skinned. Muhammad Mustafa Ramadan reported this in detail, and later on, two young assassins were sent to gun him down in a London mosque during his prayer. But despite these tragedies, the young Khaled time moves on and he eventually had to go to college to continue his study. He applied to University of Edinburgh in England where he is accepted and met with Mustafa Al-Toni. As fellow Benghazian, both of them quickly become friends, especially since Mustafa used to study with Khaled's father who is a school teacher in Libya. There are three types of Libyan students there. The first are writers, those who were sent by their state abroad to write a report back to the state, in other words, spies, young spies who took the opportunity to experience the war. The second usually come from rich parents who just want to have fun abroad. Then the last is the readers, that consist solely of Khaled and Mustafa. They are there to read and study. Every week, Khaled wrote letters to his family since that was the only form of correspondence back then, but the policy back there was every letters are to be opened and read and resealed before it was sent to the address in Libya, so they have to always be careful of what they wrote, since if it was too private or too radical, there will be problems. That's why on one of the innocent letters, Khaled's mother once praised the dictator Gaddafi in one of their letters writing back to Khaled. Besides Mustafa, Khaled's closest friend was a girl named Rana. He enjoyed her companionship, but it was one of those relationships that could be more but never. He also got close to Professor Walbrook, whose essay is the reason why Khaled chose to go to Edinburgh in the first place. Khaled received news that the short story author he heard back on the radio have written a book titled The Given and the Taken. He and Mustafa was searching for the book when news that student from University of Tripoli and Benghazi Garyunis University student was captured by the regime came out. Mustafa, who heard that there would be peaceful demonstration outside of Libyan embassy in London, decided to go there, taking Khaled with him. They went to London and spent the night in a hotel near the embassy. They were young, excited, and fearful of protesting a regime known for assassination and even capturing students so openly. They consume a combination of vodka, cigarettes, and balaclava to cover their faces for additional courage. Khaled even went to a strip club, which is basically just a people at that time, to see a naked woman for the first time in his life for additional courage. Then they went to the embassy with the other students. Despite Khaled's sense of foreboding, he didn't say anything to Mustafa. They even talked of going to a cafe for lunch after the protest and staying another night in London to look around the city. They're young, optimistic, innocent, and in hindsight, naive even. When they arrived, a crowd have already gathered at the protest. Students from various places along with journalists and TV crews. There were even police officers there. Khaled remembers seeing a woman police officer and surprised at how young she looked, almost as young as the gathering students. The protesters demanded the release of Libyan students, but the embassy replied by showing guns through their windows. The students started chanting Libya, Libya, and then shots was fired. 11 Libyan students were shot, including among them Khaled and Mustafa. He was bleeding through his chest while the ambulance carried him to a hospital along with Mustafa, and both of them was crying from their pain and missing their mother. Among the 12 people who got shot, one is dead, a police officer named Yvonne Fletcher. But despite a British woman being gunned down in London, Thatcher let the shooters went back to their country without any punishment. Yes, in case if it's not clear enough, this book is a historical fiction reimagining the life of the Libyan student that was shot during a student protest in 1984. After the event, Khaled and Mustafa had to stay at the hospital set by the government to make sure of their safety, and it was during this time that Hossam's book was finally published. He also had a chance to promote his book in BBC, but when he was asked about the killing of Muhammad Mustafa Ramadan and the protester shooting, he strangely didn't answer and the interview had to be cut short, making Mustafa had a bad first impression of him. The shot changes everything for Khaled and Mustafa. They can no longer go back to Edinburgh since the Libyan student there that was sent by Gaddafi refused to have them at the university, and once Khaled went out of the hospital, he and Mustafa went their separate way, with Khaled staying in London in an empty apartment that Rana have. He cannot go back to university and he cannot go back to his home in Libya since even Scotland Yard told him how dangerous it can be for him and his family to fly back home, making him an exile in London. So as an 18 years old, he spent most of his time in a foreign country, away from his family. He mostly goes to the library, reading, and then walk around the city, at least enjoying being anonymous while healing from his injury. But eventually he needed to find a job in order to keep living there, which thankfully he managed to find quickly thanks to the help of Professor Walbrook, who has been in contact with him ever since the shooting. He eventually moved from Rana's place into his own home, also thanks to the professor's recommendation, and at this time Rana's parents have moved to Jordan because of the Lebanese civil war. She invited Khaled into a trip to France where they met Selham, a Palestinian who is also taking asylum in Jordan. They went on a trip together, and this will be his first time experiencing the awkwardness of being an exile because he was refused entry in one of the borders. Because Khaled is a stoic young man in both the positive and negative quality of stoicness, most of the time he lived his life as best as he could in London, trying to make a home out of it despite none of his family being there. But there are moments that you really feel for him, like how his uncle visited because he was sent there by his mother to see how he is. You can feel how much he misses his family there. During his exile, Khaled's life turned even more into literature, eventually getting him a job as a teacher. Mustafa went the other way, at first joining the political opposition of Gaddafi before he assassinated their leaders, and he had to go back to London to be a property agent. He eventually did manage to see his family again once UK lifted the Libyan travel restriction 9 years after the shooting. He finally got to tell his father everything that happened to him with no fear of people spying on them. It took him even longer to finally meet Hossam. Rana, who at that time had already moved back to Syria to inherit his father's business, was diagnosed with brain tumor. She decided to return to England to have a surgery, and it was in Khaled that she confided and asked for help. Khaled met with Hossam by coincidence in a hotel near the hospital. The Libyan writer is now working as a hotel clerk. Khaled, Mustafa, and Hossam will eventually meet, and it was interesting seeing their dynamic, because Khaled and Mustafa is and was reader and Hossam was a writer. How they approach Hossam feel like the different approach Khaled and Mustafa have to reading. Khaled separates the art from the artist, while Mustafa combines the two into one abstract image. All three of them eventually live in the city of London, and the three friendship dynamic changes as time goes. At first growing in an imbalanced way because of Mustafa's dislike to Hossam that is also fueled by his own insecurities, but the Arab Spring is getting closer, and with it the wind of change that will reshape the three of them started to blow. This is an amazing historical fiction, same genre but very different with Han Kang's We Do Not Part. For the story itself, well, there are bad things that happen in the story, while Khaled, Mustafa, and Hossam is victim of their situation of a military regime. But this is not a story about being a victim. It's a story about celebrating life, family, friendship, about loving people despite their circumstances, despite being an exile. It's a great story that in itself is a window to a past that can be often forgotten, and it's a great character study. You can explore the character in the story, their motivation and priorities because of how well written and how different they are from one another. I give this a 4.75. What do you think? Let me know if I missed anything, so leave your thoughts in the comment below and subscribe to the channel. That's about it. See ya.